Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships and just the problems these relationships cause. So let's talk about 10 myths about narcissism. There's a lot of myths floating around there. I'm just going to keep it to 10. Now, remember, just as a reminder, here in this month of February, a lot of the videos I'm sharing with you build on the themes in my book. It's not you, which please order in the video notes. I have the luxury here on YouTube, though, of getting deep into some of these issues in a way I just couldn't in the book. There's just restrictions when you write a book in terms of how long it can be. And some of the book, what's interesting, though, gets into some of this stuff more deeply than I can get in on YouTube. So here, I'm going to take on an issue here, something I get into chapter 1 in my book, which is about the myths of narcissism. Because I have to say, it's only getting worse. There's nothing but misunderstanding about narcissism in the world right now. Social media, quick 2-minute videos, people using the term to describe an ex who cheated on them. And it's unfortunate. And I have to say, narcissism's a great word. It's very useful. It's very descriptive. And it captures the essence of a personality style that harms other people. And it's actually not very good for the narcissistic person themselves. So let's take on these 10 myths. Let's start with number 1. Myth number 1 is that narcissistic people are always men. I get much more into this myth in the book, so you can read about this there, but narcissistic people aren't always men. Enough of you have narcissistic mothers to know that's not true. More narcissists are men, but not all. Read the book to get all the information on that one. Number 2 myth. Narcissistic people just say stuff like that because they don't have a filter. There is this assumption that narcissism is just simply someone who's blunt or brusque and speaks their mind or speaks a painful truth. And if you don't like it, then you're the one who's too sensitive. Narcissistic people are often quite abrupt and can be quite hurtful, and that's their lack of empathy. And of course, they can't tolerate when people do that to them. But by itself, bluntness, speaking their mind, that doesn't imply narcissism. Bluntness and abruptness and so-called straight talk can be a byproduct of culture. It could be something that someone observes in a person who's getting older. It could be part and parcel of other central nervous system things that are going down. A person who's blunt and abrupt may be intoxicated. This pattern of just being blunt and speaking their mind, it's one of those most narcissistic people don't have a filter. Well, they don't have a filter because they don't care about you, but not all unfiltered people are narcissistic. Number 3 is that narcissism is an illness. I get into this debate in detail in the book about NPD and narcissism as another reason to read it. Now, the term narcissism refers to a personality style. Narcissism, narcissistic. Those words are just describing the personality, like introvert or extrovert or agreeable. Now, is there a personality disorder called narcissistic personality disorder? Yes, there is. Do all people with these personalities have it? We don't know. Because unless a person is evaluated for the actual personality disorder by someone who's qualified, then we don't know. Some do, but not all. And keep in mind, there are some people, just because a person has NPD doesn't mean their narcissism is more severe. It just means that they've been diagnosed by a licensed mental health professional. Number 4, narcissistic people can significantly change. Again, I take this myth on in depth in the book. The short answer, not really. Narcissistic people might be able to make small changes, the kinds of changes a therapist might notice, that might shift a little bit on a checklist, sure. But can they make the kind of changes that could make a relationship healthy and functional or make amends? Probably not. And most folks with this personality style don't believe they need to change because they think everything's your fault and they're perfect. Again, the short answer to this question and this myth, could you change your personality that easily? Nope. And not only can't a narcissist really change, they usually don't want to. Myth number 5, narcissistic people just can't help it. They can't help it. They can't stop themselves. It's their personality. So we can't be mad at them or hurt by them because it's just who they are. Again, this is another myth that I dismantle in the book. But you already know it from your lives. They can help it. They are able to keep it together in front of a crowd where they want the validation and admiration and to be thought of as a great person. But in the car on the way home, once you leave the party where they were charming, and you're in the car with them, just you and them, they go off on you. They know what they're doing. They can help it. They have enough restraint to know when their behavior is a good look and people will judge them and when it's not. But they don't have enough empathy or self-awareness to not use you as a punching bag when they can't manage their feelings or frustrations. Myth number 6 is that narcissistic people love themselves. Remember the beautiful boy Narcissus who fell in love with his reflection? The myth is much more complicated than that. And so too is this concept of narcissistic self-love. At the core, narcissism is more of a self-loathing, an internal core that feels unlovable and compensates through all sorts of defenses that allow the narcissistic person to feel important, powerful, strong, and perfect. Defenses like looking good and vanity and seeking status and superficiality can make them seem like they love selfies and looking at themselves and just their appearance. But again, all of that is more of a way for them to get love because their sense of self never really got to fully form. Trust me, I'm betting that you might love yourself more than the narcissistic person does at that deep core level. But this analysis of all of this gets really complicated because then, and understandably so, when you hear this, you may feel bad for the narcissistic person. And you may feel like you want to lavish them and just love them and love them, lavish them with love so they know they're lovable. But remember, these defenses I'm talking about that they have, they're unconscious. Narcissistic people are not aware of this self-loathing they have inside. And when their insecurity gets popped, for example, something doesn't go their way, their sense of grandiosity, I should say, gets popped. The defenses don't hold and they lose it. Think of a dam breaking. Many of us have wasted years and lifetimes knowing about the narcissistic people's deep insecurities and just wanting to love them out of it. That's their responsibility, not ours. And instead of them receiving your love as a gift and doing the painful inner work of addressing their core wound, they take your love as supply and then treat you with contempt. So that is a myth. They do not love themselves. Myth number 7 is that narcissism is black or white. You're either narcissistic or you're not. Nope. Like everything in health and mental health and life in general, it's all a continuum. At the milder end, we have superficial, emotionally immature, admiration-seeking, emotionally shallow, narcissistic folks. They tend to be selfish, not very deep, probably won't listen to your problems, but they're not really harmful. At the far end are the malignant, coercive, exploitative, isolating, deeply manipulative, menacing narcissistic folks who can actually be very harmful. At the mildly narcissistic level, I don't even know that the word narcissism really even helps us understand their behavior. What we're seeing in them is more of an emotionally immature shallowness. But so many people want to ask me the question, well, are they or aren't they narcissistic? Listen, it takes more than one conversation to figure that out. And even then, it's not yes or no. When it comes to narcissism, especially if you're just getting to know someone, the answer might be, I don't know, sorta, kinda. Myth number 8 is that all cheaters are narcissistic. Infidelity can feel like the ultimate narcissistic move. It hurts the other person, it doesn't account for their feelings, it's a betrayal, it undercuts a sense of trust and safety in the relationship. It feels like the cheater didn't even begin to consider the other person in the relationship. They probably didn't. It feels entitled, it feels selfish. All the stuff that makes narcissism, right? But it's not that simple. Cheating and infidelity are complicated. If it happens to you, it sucks. It breaks your heart like nothing else. It's that simple. But healing looks different depending on whether or not the cheater is cheater is narcissistic, I should say. The non-narcissistic cheater may really make amends, may attempt to offer an explanation, even if it's not an explanation that feels good. A non-narcissistic cheater will take ownership and responsibility. They won't blame you. They'll get help and will commit themselves to working on it. Or even if your relationship doesn't work out with them, they'll still recognize that it was their actions that blew it up and not blame you. And actually, not all narcissistic folks cheat. The self-righteous narcissistic folks get more supply from being morally upright and not cheating and judging other people who cheat. And some nice folks cheat. It's not a nice thing to do. But not all cheaters are narcissistic. Myth number 9 is that narcissism is just bragging and arrogance. That they're just bragging and being pretentious and preening about because they're compensating for something. They are compensating, I agree with that. But it's not just bragging and arrogance. The analogy I often use is that if someone showed me an egg, I would not say that they have a cake. I would say that they have an egg. But that egg, mixed with flour and sugar and baking soda and butter and some other ingredients and stuck in the oven, no, that's a cake. Just as if a person is selfish or just arrogant, I'd say they're just selfish, they're arrogant, but they need all the other stuff. The lack of empathy, the entitlement, the arrogance, the validation seeking, the manipulative behavior to be fully narcissistic. Some braggy people are empathic. They do listen and may just be a little insecure. They're just bragging. But narcissism isn't just arrogance and bragging. Myth number 10 is that narcissistic people have no remorse. This one is tricky. Because believe it or not, narcissistic people actually do have remorse, but it doesn't come out as apology or even behaviors that seem to show remorse. When they get caught in a bad thing, they blame other people, but they do know it's bad. And their version of feeling bad is irritability, shame, hollow apologies. Not feeling remorse is heavy stuff that we see in psychopathy and dark tetrad patterns. It's sort of a missing autonomic nervous system piece, a normal social moral recognition of a bad thing. Narcissistic people are arrogant and entitled enough to believe that they can get away with a bad thing, but they know it's a bad thing. And when they get caught, yes, the shame does overwhelm them, and their guilt will come out. Instead of apologizing or trying to make it right, their guilt will come out as them attacking the person to whom they did the bad thing, as though it's your fault that the narcissistic person looks bad, right? But that is still remorse and recognition that they did wrong. The dark tetrad model of personality acknowledges that there is an overlap between narcissism and psychopathy, but they are not the same thing. I get more deeply into the myths in my new book, and more importantly, I link how these myths can complicate our ability to identify these patterns and subsequently to heal from them. If you have other myths that you've heard about narcissism or that you want debunked, please drop them in the comments. Thank you again and again. You can order the book. Just go to the video notes and hit the link. Thank you.